All right, so it's just started recording. So hello everyone, you're watching this. It's Sylph Dominic Hawkins here, coming to you, not live this time, how ironic, but the Reigning Spirit Dojo Hoshinden Philosophy and Theory lectures. And I'm joined tonight, because it's going to be 8 to 9 p.m. when you guys are watching this, but we're pre-recording this. I'm joined by Vikki Basdeo. So Vikki's a very good friend of mine who's agreed to come on and be a special guest in the discussions for you all. And Vikki's background is in Kundalini yoga. So Vikki, do you want to say hi to everyone? A little bit of introduction about your background?
Sure. So I've just had someone pop in the door.
Well, that was well timed. Say hi to the...
So yes, my name is Vikki Basdeo, and I've been a practitioner and a teacher of Kundalini yoga, and have been practicing yoga since I was about 12 years of age, and am now 53 years of age. So it's been a big part of my life.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something that I'm pretty passionate about and love sharing with others. So I feel very honoured that you've asked me along today.
Oh, thanks, Vic. And thanks very much for joining. Like I said, you're the first of the special guests to come on to the little Hoshinden series. The students have just had to put up with just me for the last 2 months. And in the discussions recently, I had a whole huge topic list. I've been checking them off one by one. And so last week or the week before that, started to go down the discussions of the etymology of spiritual theory in the Japanese martial art that we study. And there are a lot of discussions of Mahayana Buddhism and presenting works on where that turns into Mikyo Buddhism in Japan, and how that butts up with Taoism, and they form these really fascinating kind of semi-complementary, semi-not complementary ideas. Last week, I started getting to the topic about the mudra, mantra, and mandala. So, and immediately you came to mind as someone who, I know we've talked about this in the past, and we've had a lot of fun. You know, always really enjoy our dialogues in person. So I thought, perfect to get you onto the little show and get your feedback and get your input, because my involvement in martial arts is coming up on 20 years. But like you said, yours in yoga is coming up on 40 years. So you're well my senior in that regard. And my yoga study is not a 40-year long study. So it's great to have you, and thanks for being so willing to have a bit of fun and jump on. I'm sure everyone will appreciate it when they watch the video. So just kicking straight off, in terms of the three that I just mentioned, so the big 3 M's, yeah, mudra, mantra, and mandala. In a martial art context, I've been presenting them to the students as a way of kind of explaining that they are not even practices. They're ideas and methods for viewing the manifestation of experience. So there's like manifestation through the physical form, the manifestations of vibrational form, and the manifestations of symbology and archetypal, like graphical symbology, and that they're all related to the human being in that they are almost like another language, almost like we use English, terms of English, to express concepts and ideas. That mudra, mantra, and mandala are ways of passing down through the generational lineages, hundreds, thousands of years, concepts and ideas that the human can meditate upon, or even through the practice gain some insight through, like reading a book. So that's how I've been presenting them to the students, and how they're presented in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. But I was curious about what you have found in Kundalini yoga. Like how are they presented in Kundalini yoga?
Okay, well, yeah, I love those 3. When you mentioned mudra, mantra, mandalas, they're things that are very, very much a part of my life, my own personal practice.
Yeah.
I have a very strong personal practice. I pretty much get up at every morning, 6:30 till 7:30. That's my time. That's my time. And I do practice with another person. We have an open space where we just allow ourselves to do whatever it is we do. Kundalini yoga is definitely my main practice. And with that, Kundalini yoga is a yoga where we incorporate, you know, all of those aspects. So mudra is very important in the, I would actually say the intention of when we're working with mudra. It brings a focus to intention. So we use in Kundalini yoga both hand mudras and also eye mudras, what we're doing with our eyes. So we very often, you know, if we're doing some kind of a meditation, we'll close our eyes and focus on the brow, or maybe the crown chakra, or maybe the tip of the nose, or maybe the chin. And each of those things is working with different intentions, which we bring into our practice. And mantra is also another thing that's it's a very big component of Kundalini yoga. We always start a practice, be it a class or our own personal practice. I will always start with the Bij mantra, which for Kundalini yoga is the mantra Satnam. But we'll also sing a tune-in mantra, and the tune-in mantra is beautiful. It's my way of connecting with this lineage. And it's also my way of sort of handing over my sort of petty mind that, you know, I might be thinking of my daily worries or whatever, and it's just my way of connecting with the actual lineage, my teachers. And it's a beautiful way of paying homage to them, honoring them. And it's a lovely way to get me into gratitude right at the beginning of the day. Like, wow, you know, I'm part of something bigger than me. And this kind of holds me in my daily life, particularly when we're having challenging times like we are now. I feel like I'm not just this little atom that's separate from everything else and having my own little issues, but I'm part of a lineage. And the Kundalini yoga mantra is Om Namo Gurudev Namo. So when we chant that, we say we're connecting with the golden chain.
Right. The great progression.
We go back to all of the Sikhs who were sort of part of this lineage. And so it's a really lovely, humbling way for me to connect to something that's so much bigger than myself.
Beautiful.
Mandala, because I am very, very much connected to artworks. My main mediums are working with textiles, but also painting, and I do a lot of nature crafts. Of, you know, I make big earth mandalas.
I've seen some beautiful.
When I go to Seven Sisters, when I go to Seven Sisters, I've the last, I think, 3 or 4 years, I've been a part of a team that creates a big earth mandala, which is there to sort of hold in ceremony the festival. And I have a love of mandalas. But
comes across.
But what comes to mind is there's the particular mantra in Kundalini yoga practice. It's called the Adi Shakti. And it's talking about Kundalini, the actual, it's sort of like the story of the white snake. And the mantra is, it starts with Adi Shakti, the youth. It kind of traces the cyclical nature of ourselves. So we've got the youth, which is Adi Shakti, and then there's Sarab Shakti, which we meet the other, the lover. It's when we have our, you know, the polarity between the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine within. And then once we grapple with those polarities, we have the creation. You have Pritam Bhagwati, where the male and the female give birth. So whether it's physically to, they become parents, or it's an idea. We give
Yeah,
birth to an idea.
a new concept. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so when that happens, and this is the part that I love the most, is that once you've birthed, you have to let go of your creation. You have to let it go into the world. And so I think it's in our sort of Western culture, it's something we don't really have, we're not really taught that much about how to let go of things and how to die to things, how to die to life, and be in that space of being in the unknown. You've let go of your children, or you've let go of your book that you've written, and then you're in this space of like, what next? But in this beautiful mantra, the words are Kundalini Mata Shakti, Mata Shakti, Mata Shakti. So this is the Great Mother. This is when we let go. That's when we get the wisdom. So that's the getting of wisdom.
Yeah.
And we either physically die, or we shed, like the snake, we shed just a skin, and we are rebirthed. And so to me, the mantra, the mandala, to me, is very much about that cyclical nature that we have of we're constantly birthing, we're constantly creating, we're constantly having to let go and to die and to surrender. And so for me, all of the work that I do with mandala is very much process work, of where, as much as possible, I'm learning to be with the journey and let go of this destination, which,
and then
we often so that's not so much a Kundalini yoga perspective. That's just really my perspective and my own,
of course,
my own embodying of those three aspects.
And I mean, like I mentioned in my talks and to my students all the time that all I can ever present is my opinions and my thoughts on the topics from my own personal experience, and that we just assume that all of my teachers are rolling in their grave, and just make that assumption and then go from there. That either it's abhorrent that I'm the one in charge, or they're just like, no, that's not what I meant at all. You got it completely wrong. So it's fun, and I think that this is where I've really enjoyed in the study of martial arts, in both like Hoshinu and Bujinkan, the Japanese arts. I've really enjoyed that it's this really funny paradox. Maybe you find this in yoga, that there's this incredibly long, powerful lineage, thousands of years back, and there's scrolls and there's books and there's like, there's birth charts of who was born to who 1,500 years ago.
You've got to tap into the Akashic records.
That's right, to get all that. But it's like there's all that there, and then it's only very surface. Like none of that actually represents the experience that you have with the art. These are they're just names. They're just people's names inscribed on stone tablets. But it's not them. It's like we're all servants of the art, for want of a better term. We're all kind of and servants is probably the wrong terminology, but we're all pilgrims, wandering up the mountain, and they're just other pilgrims who've come before. But the art itself isn't any of those individual people. The art itself isn't such and such from 1100 AD. And I find that really interesting in Japanese martial arts. I don't know if it's the same in other arts, where like they're kind of presented, and I think some of the students peel off in both ways. There's some students who become incredibly obsessed with the stone tablets, that they are their gospel. And then there's other students who kind of disregard them completely. And I think a nice middle ground is probably far more, respect and homage of, because none of us would be here treading the paths if not for the ancestors before us, who took they were pilgrims, and they tread those paths for us, and then light up the way and write books and present work and leave breadcrumbs along the way.
Yeah, that's lovely. I know two things have come to my mind, and one is that you know, so often we have these teachers who in and of themselves are probably complete mavericks, and but then when
Yeah.
they die, like for instance Kundalini Yoga, who
Yeah.
Yogi Bhajan, who brought
Yeah.
Kundalini Yoga to the West.
Yeah.
I mean, he was encouraging women to wear turbans. He was doing all these things that
Yeah.
Sikhs would probably never condone.
Yeah.
But then when he passed away, and I find this with so many visionaries,
Yeah.
and you know,
the leaders of it.
that once they die,
Yeah.
often their teachings become institutionalized, and oh no, you
Absolutely.
can't do this, it has to be this way, it has to be pure, we have to keep
Yeah.
the purity. And
Yeah.
I've never been able to do that. And
Yeah.
I had a lovely experience maybe 3 or 4 years ago. As a Kundalini Yoga teacher, I'm supposed to wear white.
Yes. Yep.
And I've never liked wearing white.
Yeah.
And so, and I live on a farm, and I thought, and I live in a tiny home, and I was like, I can't have this whole shelf of white clothing. It just doesn't work. And I went into my big journey of naturally dyeing clothes. So I sort of feel like I was just being a bit of a rebel by saying, right, I've had enough with white, and I'm just going to start naturally dyeing all my clothing. And it was quite like an initiation for me to say, you know what, I love these teachings. I think they're so powerful and they're so useful, but I'm also not going to lose myself in the process of being, you know, a Kundalini Yoga teacher. So,
like when
I remember thinking, oh no, the community is going to reject me and cast me out, and as it was, I didn't get that response at all.
Yeah, right. You probably started a trend, you know, people wearing dark green and red and patterns. I find that it's funny. So many thoughts come to mind on that. That idea that traditions for tradition's sake, you know, when ritual and tradition that's designed to, or I think that tradition is designed to present a concept of understanding to people who are not yet at a position of being able to grasp the depth of the understanding. And so the tradition is to assist people who are new to an experience or a path to just get into a habit that has positive benefit for them. But the expectation is that as they progress through their development, they'll come to have a personal relationship with the purpose, or a personal relationship with the concept. And then at that point, the tradition is void. But ironically, by that time they're either teachers or they're, you know, various higher up levels, and then there's this idea like, oh, I understand what that's for. I can manipulate that in a way that I'm not being disrespectful. I feel great respect in my heart for what it is that I'm studying, but I understand that this is just a method, you know, and there are no methods. I remember there's a good. You brought a story of mine back to my mind. One of my first teachers in Sydney, this was probably 2000, maybe 18 or 19 years ago. It seemed like nothing at the time. We had an event. We were moving equipment from the dojo to a local park because there was a community fair on, and we were doing some demonstrations. And I had this memory of us setting up the day before, and it was raining. And the driveway up to the dojo was dirt, so it was very muddy. And we were having to pull equipment out of the dojo and load it into the back of cars and then drive up there to put down, ready for the next day. It was going to be sunshine. We were going to be doing demonstrations to the public. And you know, I was a good Hoshinden. I was a good student at the time. And so I was taking my shoes off every time I walked in and out of the dojo, which was, it was just tradition training. It was just, that was what I'd been trained to do. And really at that time, I hadn't considered it beyond a ritual. I hadn't even considered its purpose, let alone practical purpose, even its kind of just its opportunity for me to feel a sense of quiet homage, each time that I entered the space. It was just a ritualized process. Go in, take your shoes off, put them in, do your thing, put your shoes back on. At the time, I only owned shoes that I could pull on and off quickly. Nothing had laces, and hadn't even been to Japan yet at that point. And I remember my teacher watched me, and I remember thinking it was a bit odd. He just watched me do a couple of loops, into the dojo, take my shoes off, walk in, pick up something, go back, slip my shoes on, go to the car, put them in, walk to the dojo, take them off, get the things. And he watched me a couple of times, maybe 3 or 4 times. And then he just said to me, you can probably leave your shoes on and still respect the dojo at the same time. And I thought, what? What are you talking about? You crazy, you're sacrilege. How you're the one who taught me this. How dare you suddenly backflip on your thing? Yeah. And it was so simple, but I think it was the beginning of me even contemplating that there were these rituals in place, but there were reasons and purpose that were far beyond, just the rote learning. And I think that was probably the beginning of me even realizing that when I stepped into the dojo and I took my shoes off, there actually was a great flame of respect within me. And it was a wonderful activity for taking a moment to just pause and acknowledge that, even if nothing else, even if not for a practical purpose about dirt and mud, And then he just decided to show that by leaving his shoes on and just traipsing mud in and out of the place while he gathered all of the equipment. And it was his dojo, and so I thought it was an amazing little moment that I got to see my teacher break that down for me, and then just mop up the mud at the end of the, kind of.
It's a beautiful illustration of how often we are given these. I mean, because one of the things that I really recognize in my own yoga practice is, for the most part, I embrace discipline.
Yes. Yeah, I know where you're going.
Because it takes something to get up every morning out of choice.
Yes.
Out of choice. It's so ingrained in me now that it's something that I look forward to for the most part. It's not that much of an effort.
Yeah.
Maybe in winter, yes, it is sometimes. But at the same time, I'm at that stage in my life of where I'm going, wow, there are these things that I do, and sometimes they're just habits that are so ingrained I don't really question. I do them.
Yeah.
But it's quite beautiful when I catch myself and go, hang on, why am I doing this? Like, why am I doing this tune-in mantra? No one's here to see me.
Yes.
I don't have to do it.
Yep.
But then I have to check in and go, you know what? These practices have taken me through some big life changes. I've had a stroke. I've had, all sorts of health issues. But these practices have been such a wonderful tool for me.
Yes.
I do have this genuine gratitude to these teachers that have brought these teachings to me, and I choose it. I choose it. And so it's quite beautiful to have those moments of, like, for instance, the white, that doesn't really work for me. Yeah. Wearing a turban, it falls off. It doesn't really work for me.
Yeah. The white back.
But actually doing the tune mantra, and there are aspects that I really choose them. I deeply choose them, and I love this. There's a lot of things that I like. For instance, with the mantra, the Kundalini yoga mantras, for the most part, are pretty simple. They're not very long, and I love that I can do a mantra and deepen into it. It's just, I also feel like I do feel it. Yeah, I'm at a place in my life where I'm loving deepening into things. I've spent a lot of my life being a bit of a hippie fairy, sort of flitting here and flitting there. So there's a part in me now that really loves deepening into things. And I think that's why I would say that my practice, it's a lot less about Kundalini yoga, and it's a lot more about me claiming my own sort of sovereignty, my own practice, and carving out this time in my day that it's my time, but it's also the time that I sort of, have this connection with something bigger than me, and it sort of shapes the rest of my day and my life, I suppose. Yeah.
I can directly relate. At this time where the dojo is closed, obviously, at the moment with the situation, and it's been closed for a couple of months. But I drive down and I open up and I go down and I practice on the mats and I sit down in meditation in front of the kamidana with the shrine, and I light the candles and I just have a beautiful evening. Like kids are read, my wife's looking after the kids. I go down, I can have an hour just to even just sit in front of the shrine at the dojo. And I like it. I found that, I don't know if I could pinpoint when, but at some point in the last decade, it shifted into a much more personal relationship for me. That this, let's say the art, like it's almost like it as an entity of itself and I are like lovers. There's this very beautiful mutual bond, it's like my beloved. And then the practices, the traditions, for want of a better word, they form kind of like the language that I'm used to dialoguing with in terms of this connection, and I do notice that year by year they adapt slightly. It's like I learn alternate ways of dialoguing in my relationship with the art itself in a different way, and then that ritual, that tradition that was there kind of falls away and is taken, something else takes its place. But within my heart, I still feel the same sense of awe and the same sense of just being such a pebble on a vast, infinitely long lake of pilgrims. With the irony being that, like, I'm not the lake, and I'm not the destination, and I'm never even gonna, like, it's like just a moment in time in this enormous generation of things for thousands of years. But there's something about the traditions that have helped me get to the point where I could develop my own language with the art. And that's not on all levels. There's some things that I haven't found that yet. I still have to sit down, and all the classes still start in the same way that I started them 20 years ago. Like, the classes all start with the same bow and the same prayer that I was taught when I first started. And there's such power in that. And I watch my own students, if they're running their class and if we've swapped, it's their class and I'm heading out, and I get the privilege of just catching them starting their class, and they sit down and they sit in their circle and they sit and they go through the same bow, and something really warms in my heart that there's this downstream pebbling effect going on. That was the thing I learned from my teacher.
I love your your example of the language, because I mean that's really how we then relate to each other.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, and I get that with Kundalini yoga. There's a big part of this practice is something called tantric numerology, which is really connecting with the subtle bodies, and it's something that I've really been delving into more and more deeply. And this word tantra, a lot of people are like, whoa, what's tantra? But for me, it's just very much around relationship, and so
self and then other.
And how do we deepen our connections with self, others, earth, spirit?
Yes.
So yeah, it's I guess it could be like a vehicle in that we, yeah, that carries us somewhere
Yeah.
somehow.
Which is, it's funny, isn't it? Saying, one of the best quotes I saw, it was actually an internet meme, you know, of all places. And I think it said something like, I have no idea where I'm going, but damn it, I'm on my way. And I really liked it. You know, I think I saved it on the computer because it really spoke, it spoke to me in that sense that with such incredible confidence, I tread forward into the unknown, you know? And I've often pondered that because in martial arts, with Budo, we're all well aware of what the goal is on a physical level, because the goal is dead, you know, like on a tangible level, the progression of the physical form in that study is towards death, whether or not it's through age or through go back a couple of 100 years, and it's quite literal. It's through the study of warfare and people find it strange, but as a form of spiritual liberation. So liberation from, it's a form of yoga. It's a yoke. It's like the liberation from the sense of the trappings of identified persona, you know, getting in and being like, oh wait, I'm just part of the inward and outward breath of this. And so very different scenario, you know, Genghis Khan isn't riding over the hilltops today. So I think that what's happened is, and I see this in my life, those ideas have translated into internal dialogue, an internal journey, like the death of self and the experience of the changing, the rebirth of the conception of self, some of the basic questions of identity, especially when times have been tough, you know, where your identity really gets put up with multiple devices. So
or a hammering.
Yeah. And I think that's when these things, and in martial arts, they're called, the person's called the warrior mystic. That's when the study of those pilgrims really comes to be of benefit, of fruit. You know, it's not really seen when things are fine, but it's when times are testing that the wisdom and the philosophy that comes from dialoguing with self really shines and becomes something that everyone wants. You know, suddenly people start writing novels and there's books, and, you know, all of a sudden everyone wants it. It's this wisdom that you can't go to a workshop for a weekend and get a certificate on self-dialogue, you know, like that's just not it's just this.
You have to do the work.
Yeah, like you said, you just have to
not the work.
It is funny, isn't it? Because I know what you mean. There's effort applied, but it's not. It's like self-decided. You know, it's like I go outside. It's as if I'd go and just dig a hole in the garden for the experience of digging a hole, not because I'm actually planning something.
Yeah, I compare it often to sculpting time.
Ooh.
In a way that I allow all of these things to have a place in my life and my experience. And I mean, you know, it's Gracie, my daughter, goes to the Steiner School. It's something that I have done, you know, teacher training and
yeah.
What was I going to say? I've lost the thread, but no, I've lost the thread of what I was saying.
Beeping in the background.
I got distracted.
I'll just turn them off.
Yeah.
So I was talking about how what I'd found was that, you know, the goals on a tangible level, we're talking about work. Often I think with things that we apply ourselves to, they have measurable outcomes, you know, like, oh, I'm building the fence, and then I know when the fence will be done.
I remembered.
Okay, yeah.
And it it was this idea of having this time with Gracie homeschooling. I've really been seeing how, you know, the Steiner curriculum really has these rhythms, and it's made me realize, oh, this is the importance of these kind of practices. My art practice, my yoga practice.
Right.
These are things that I want to cultivate in my life, cultivating these nourishing rhythms, these deeply nourishing rhythms.
Yeah.
And then the outcomes and the objectives and the goals almost seem to melt away. And when you're so steeped in these rhythms that like for instance, for me to start the day without doing my yoga practice, well, you know, I'm a 53-year-old woman now. If I don't do a bit of stretching, I'm going to feel it on just a very practical, physical level.
Yes.
So, you know, we eat fairly well, and these things are, you know, they're like you were saying before with this idea of the beloved. It's like these things, the more I cultivate them, you know, the more intimate my relationship with my beautiful garden with my herbs and my vegetables.
Yes.
Yeah, they're such important aspects of my life, and you know, yes, there are things that I'm still challenged by, and they present themselves as work. But then there are other things that they might look like work to others, like getting up early in the morning, having a cold shower. They might go, whoa, what's that about? But I know from 15 years of experiencing the benefit of you know, pulling myself together into my body in the morning and having a cold shower and going, oh, wow, yeah, that feels great. I'm alive now. I'm awake.
Then you take action.
But yeah.
That's beautiful. And it's I like how you I like how you coined that. You know, it's almost like those things are the opportunities. Those rituals, they might seem from the outside like effort, but they probably only seem that way to people who aren't also having their own personal relationships with life or with the cosmos or with the experience of self in that way. And so it does look like effort because it's not something that's currently part of their experience. You know, it's new, it's something else. And you know, it's fun in martial arts. There's this really interesting, there's just all these little bell curve waves along the progression, you know. And my dialoguing with some of my teachers who are at their sort of 40, 50 year study, you know, and more, they've, in contrast to my 20 years, they've said the same thing. They've said, oh, the waves and the crest, they just continue. You know, there's always times where you just, you're racing to get into the dojo. You know, you're really having a wonderful time with your lover of the art. And then there's times where it's like you're having this argumentative experience, you know, and it's you and the art, and it's like this, you know, you kind of condescending.
About to have divorce.
That's right, yeah. But damn it, you turn up anyway. And you know, I've found that, like, I found every sort of 5 years or so, I go through these cycles. So it's, you know, it's happened like 5 times. Go through these cycles of from unbelievable passion to unbelievable kind of resistance. And it's in those times of resistance I found I fall back on the traditions and I fall back on the ritual structure, and they really help me, because it's like, okay, I'm just all a little bit, you know, pissy over here in my, why do I have to get blah blah blah, but I know when I look back that actually at the end, when I sit down in meditation in front of the shrine, I know that feeling, and it's like remembering that practice helps me in those times where I'm just having a bit of a childish tantrum, you know, about my ongoing relationship with this progression towards infinity. And then it's like when things are good, it's like I still head down and I sit in front of that shrine. but it doesn't feel like it requires any kind of resolve of mine. And so I found that my experience of discipline on that sense becomes kind of transcendental, that it's like, I don't have this idea that these are the things I have to do towards certain outcomes. It's like, no, there's an overarching relationship that I'm seeking. And I do have quite a good glimpse now of what that feels like, what that tastes like, what that smells like. And though that it's that vision that kind of that causes me to take action. It's that vision that gets me, okay, well, it's time to sit in front of the shrine, because it's that's just the behavior I have to have now as part of my overarching journey, you know. Is that what are your thoughts on that? Do you find
I think there's something that I'm reminded of, and it's something that I've always loved in my connection with you, Dom, is I'm finding one of my greatest parts in my practice is actually questioning and inquiry.
Yeah.
And I find that when I'm getting a bit too heady, that's when I'm forgetting to actually question things. I remember when I started doing Kundalini yoga, you know, years ago. I remember my first relationship was so skeptical. I was like, what is this practice? I mean, this is weird yoga. Yeah. And I had a very uncomfortable relationship initially. These people in turbans and white and jumping around and saying these weird things. But I actually think it's such a healthy part of the practice for me of constantly questioning. Hang on, why am I doing this now? And when I take the time to do that, I often find myself dropping into the most wonderful spaces of feeling like a kid. And I would say this, if you know, I've always connected with you as someone who has a wonderful sense of curiosity and of everything and anything, and that to me is one of the most heartful parts of the practice of life. I think for me, you know, I don't think I can distinguish between my art practice and my yoga practice and just this practice of inquiry. I mean, it's what keeps me absolutely enamored with the beloved, whatever that falls into form of it. Yeah, just because I think that's a part of you know, a big part of our initiation in life is just to continually be, you know, being stripped away the identity of, well, you know, for a long, you know, I haven't been teaching Kundalini yoga for the past year. And a big part of my identity was wrapped up in being the teacher. And I had all of these sort of other art things coming into my life, presenting themselves to me. And I was like, oh, am I allowed to do this? Am I sort of turning my back on my calling? And it was like, well, no, this is, I've often had this little part, this little voice in me saying, what if your practice was actually just for you? You could really be calling the shots.
Yeah.
And so it feels like my life has more and more become that.
Yep.
And then in letting go of the that identity of, you know, the teacher, things are coming to me more, so more gracefully. I'm efforting less in that, and you know, it's scary, and I'm excited that I'm spending more time doing different things in different ways. So yeah, it's all you know. It's good to be humbled often.
In some of the dialoguing with my students in classes, when we'd often, before this, you know, good stay-at-home situation, when we'd have dialogue in class, and there was often chance for 10-20 minutes of dialogue in my Friday night classes. So this has been a real benefit these last 2 months to have such a huge amount of time. I can devote, you know, whole hours in discussing concepts and ideas. But I found one of the things that just continually has come up year after year after year in all those. Sorry, still getting messages. All of those dialogues is this idea that, like, what are we actually going to do? Like this practice, say, for want of a better word. So I'm just roping the entire of the study of the art into the word practice. If there isn't this great goal, so in the martial art context, there isn't. Maybe there was a case for saying 500 years ago or even 200 years ago, oh, you know, there's great armies rolling over the mountaintops. There's a really tangible goal. It's in 6 months they'll be here on, you know, over the Alps on elephants, and so there's all this progression towards that. I think that in that, the practitioner can kind of get lost in having a relationship, because it's all very goal oriented. It's all very process based. You know, these are the things I'm learning for this reason, and it's very top down. But then once that falls away, and I think as a martial artist, this is what defines the difference between things like military study compared to martial artists themselves, is that the goals are for the individual. It's like, well, who am I? How do I experience this? How is this which I call myself, and its interaction with the world? And then martial arts just becomes a vehicle for answering that question. You know, it's just a form of meditation. I've often considered the physical form of martial arts as nothing more than just the mudra of that vehicle. It's like the whole thing is just moving the physical form in ways that connect to states of mind and states of being to help answer that question. When really the question that I've always been asking is like, and I don't mean on a even on a philosophical level, just on a kind of almost like a cellular level. The question is like, what is this? You know, what is this? What is this? What is this? This relationship? What is this? And then exploring that, you know, in that kind of way. And so that's what really always furthered. It's ironically, it's not what led me into martial arts or yoga, or my study of Iyengar. It's not what initially motivated me there. The things that initially motivated me towards the studies were very tangible, you know. But when those things fell away, I found that it was that, like you said, I like that word inquiry. It was that inquiry that remained. And I look around, you know, and there were 350 odd people involved in the dojo, my teacher's dojo, when I started. You know, there's about 10 or 15 of them now, including myself, of that group who have anything to do with martial arts. And I think you narrow it down to about maybe 5 or 6 who've kind of had a desire to go further in this kind of area of inquiry. And so fascinating, you know, different people are just obviously, we're all motivated from different things. Obviously, I've been someone who's always, and I gather yourself as well, always had this kind of question, this it's like it's turned into a healthy respect for the answer with a healthy skepticism for the answer at the same time, you know.
And then what?
No, and I go, okay, I get that, but what now? And I know that really it leads me towards my death. This question just continues into that realm and beyond. And so it's a perfect segue in our conversation. Looping back to the mudra mantra mandala, and then sort of my presentation there, where I've often considered the martial art as a whole as being the physical form, as being the mudra of the art itself.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that in terms of yoga, in that context of it? It's like the physical practice obviously being a component. It's a layer. There's layers well beyond the physical practice of yoga. Would you
Yeah.
consider those at different levels?
Yeah, good question. I'm not sure whether I'm answering that specifically, but I think about a year and a half ago, I took myself to a place near where I live called the Blue Lotus Garden, where there were thousands of lotuses, and I was blown away by these lotuses. I had a moment of just going, wow, such beauty.
Wow.
And then I left and I thought, wow, hang on, there's a couple of lotus asanas, there's bound lotus, there's in Kundalini yoga you've got something called Kundalini yoga lotus. Kundalini lotus. The bound lotus is one of those where you sit cross-legged in full lotus and you try and hold the opposite toe and then you bring your head to the front. It's pretzel yoga.
Yeah.
It's pretzel yoga. And I
really
thought,
hard breath. Yeah.
It's hardcore. And I was like, well, I'm really drawn to this practice. And so I did a bit of research and was like, yes, one of the aspects of it is to focus and to really, really bring the energy in, but still keeping the heart open as you come, bring your forehead to the ground. And, there's all these beautiful explanations. But at the end of the day, I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to really have to ease my way into this because I'm flexible, but I'm not that flexible. Because one of these things I thought, well, this will be a beautiful journey to just explore this one pose.
One asana. Wow.
And see where it takes it. And it's something that it completely came from my own volition. Beautiful. It had nothing to do with my teacher or my teacher's teacher or my lineage. It was just something that's part of my practice. But I just thought, wow, I really want to journey with this. And we have a belief in the practice. If you want to break a habit, do something for 40 days. If you want to reform a new practice, do something for 90 days or 180 days. If you want to master something, do for 1,000 days. So I thought, I'm going to give this a go. I've never done that before. I'm going to give it a go. So I'm a year and a half into this practice.
That's great.
And I'm just on a journey, and it's for no one other than my own curiosity.
Yes.
And so also this is another thing that it's very much connected to a physical asana. The beginning of this year, we had a woofer at the farm who could do handstands, and I thought, I've never really been able to do handstands because I'm not really physically strong in my arms, and I've never believed that I was strong enough to do this. And I thought, well, hey, this could be another little thing that I'm going to play around with. Yeah. And I loved it. So I did a bit of research on inversions and thought, well, it's as a woman gets older, as a person gets older, it's a good thing to do something, defying gravity or going the other way. Yeah. So I started to explore that and doing, headstands and handstands and I thought, wow, I think last year was my year of the lotus. I'm still going to keep going with my lotus poses, but I'm now introducing inversions, and this is going to be my year of inversions. And I had this sense in January, it feels like the world's going to go upside down. It's going to be topsy-turvy. So why not go on with it? So these are my beautiful, playful ways of sort of weaving story into the physical, the mudra. It's my intention. It's not just I'm going to do this because I'm going to exercise my will to do this. There's actually a thread of poetry, or a thread of I don't know. There's something beautiful in it. And
intimate and personal.
Yeah, and I think this is probably one of the most important things for me if I'm talking to a student or someone else, that I really find we all need to find our own little personal practices that take us into our hero's journey, or our initiation or our shamanic journey, or whatever it is. I feel it's so important for us to And I think this is the time. This is our time to really claim our sovereignty to you know, find our way. There's a beautiful saying, there are as many paths to God as there are souls on the planet.
Yeah, yeah, that is gorgeous. Mm, mm, mm.
I realise I'm not holding this phone very well.
That's okay.
It's probably getting,
Yeah.
and I can see that it's getting a bit darker, but
No,
yeah.
it's like the video is good still. I really liked what you just said. It's like, just like immediately I can just think of or it brings up this feeling, kind of connects me with just this sense that there was a period of time where I started, all of my practice started from being for myself. And it was, I couldn't put my finger on when that happened, but it's clear when I look in chunks of time that there was a period of time where I wasn't yet aware that I was having a personal relationship. I thought I was learning something that someone else had explored, and it was their creation, you know. And then at another point in time when I realized that that like maybe there were these other people who were able to reach into the unknown and create signposts or activities or practices towards that, but they were different things. None of those activities were the thing that I was having a relationship with. None of the paths, you know, don't confuse the path for the path, the signpost for the path kind of concept. And I think it's at that point when that started to change that I became aware that I was having my own personal relationship, not just with the art, but the art as a vehicle of my relationship with that which is, you know. And then things really kicked off. and it's then that I became far less interested in being able to achieve the outcomes that some of my contemporaries had achieved for the sake of achieving that. It was just out of my own interest.
The light on.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Oops. I'm not sure that's making sense.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so it just you know, became much more okay. Well, I get up and I will be okay. I get up and I'll be I said, down at in front of the shrine. Just that's because I'm dialoguing. I'm going and I'm chatting, and that's just what I'm doing at that point in time. It doesn't really matter if there's any students arriving at the. You know, it's funny in this time where you know the current situation. I've been in touch with a lot of other teachers, not just martial artists, like yoga teachers, friends who are running meditation groups, who kind of talked about it as if like, oh, you know, maybe their students can't come to their classes anymore, so therefore they're on pause, or their practice is on pause. And I thought it was really odd, because I thought, but your relationship with the infinite eternal isn't on pause. You
never on pause.
You know what I mean? I mean, surely you still have to move your body. Isn't that all part of that relationship? You know. I've been very fortunate recently, in recent years, where my interest in meditation has progressed further in Zen and Zazen, specifically into connecting with some very wonderful teachers over in Japan, some Zen teachers, and some of my Japanese martial art teachers themselves, who are also students of Zen and involving me more in their esoteric study. They're like, you know, hidden teachings, and really all I find is more and more of these individuals who are all enamored in their own private relationships with the divine, but kind of collectively pooling together to agree to some practices, some activities, some methodologies that they can present to newcomers to the path, as ways of suggesting hey, this isn't the name of the divine, but it's going to help you get started. You know, this isn't the road to the infinite, but it's something. You know, and
It's a road.
it's a road. Yeah, that's right. It's not the road. Yeah, yeah. I mean, all roads lead to Rome, and it's been really lovely. I thought that what I was going to find there was maybe a lot of like dogmatic structure, and instead I found just this very fluid. But they're very clear about the relationship that they're having, but the paths and the progressions of that are very open to interpretation.
I have a beautiful image that's been with me for maybe 1 or 2 decades, and it was just in a someone's room, therapy room or treatment room. It was a little image of all of these people crossing a bridge, and they were holding hands. So there was always, and every person was connected to someone else, and you're always holding someone behind you and someone in front of you. And I have that beautiful image that really is this way that I connect to people. You know, sometimes I'm a student and I really need to have my hand held to take me into this new area. But then other times I'm someone who's trying to help someone to progress this way. And yeah, it's just a lovely image that I will never forget.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and it just remember, and you know, Yogi Bhajan, he used to say of himself, he really didn't want to be turned into a guru, and he'd often say, "Oh, I'm just the mailman. I'm just the forklift. What is it? Forklift driver.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. I remember that.
You know, I'm just this person who you know hands the information or uplifts, but you know, there's nothing glamorous about it. Don't try and put me on a pedestal or
there's nothing going on here that's different from what you could have going on.
Yeah, but at the same time, you know, it takes something to have the courage to be out there when you do have the days of doubt and whatever else. So yeah, it's all a dance. It's all a dance.
Well, I've wondered that, and maybe maybe you could comment on, from your perspective, that you know that question that's impossible to answer. It's like those character traits, those qualities. They were obviously there at the beginning, but they've also been formed and shaped by the study, and so they're mutually arising. Yeah, forged. That's a really good analogy. Because I think it's like it's that whole. It's all mutually folding in unto itself. It's like the practice that allows someone to be able to get up and stand, you know, in the face of whatever, and present themselves in that way, has both come from their own innate. That was already within them, and the forging of that through the process, and I think you couldn't separate them from each other. It's not like you couldn't separate some I don't even know what to call them, presenter of spiritual work instead of using like a guru term or, you know, Babaji, but you couldn't extract them from the work. Like talk about like you said before, you wonder if sometimes when the visionaries pass away, when they die, and their teachings become institutionalized. But the danger is that the individuals who are then replicating their institutionalized processes, they're not the same person who came up with those processes. So those processes are not necessarily accurate expressions of the relationship that the individual have.
Or authentic expression.
No. Yeah. And that they can point in the direction, but in the same way that like someone's biography could. But I don't suddenly pretend to don the accent or, you know, speak with a Japanese accent, and you know, I find that really fascinating, because then you've
reminded me You've reminded me of another aspect that I always connect with you about as well, is that I think a big part of my practice with Kundalini yoga, with my art
Mm.
practice, is the aspect of alchemy.
Mm. Yeah, we
Um,
talked about this a lot.
alchemy, yeah, alchemy is a very big part of um, maybe even an orientation of wanting to discover. Um, I said before, depth. I'm loving deepening into things. It's like, well, when you do, okay, the lotus, you've got the beautiful flower, this long stem, which you could say is similar to the spine.
Yeah.
Then you've got the roots in the muddy
Yeah. Murky
pond or
self.
pool.
Yeah.
But having the 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 calling or the courage or the volition to actually go into those depths
Mm.
and to see what you can bring up from that is to me the spiritual gold.
Mm.
So to me, alchemists are people who try to turn lead into gold, but I mean on a
Yeah. Yeah.
spiritual level,
Yeah.
it's actually having the courage to be with, to reflect on
Mm.
all of the aspects,
Yeah. The depth.
and then to find meaning and beauty
Mm.
in that. And
Mm.
that's definitely been a big part of my journey in these probably last 5 years, of recognizing, oh, it's a lot less at the moment about teaching for me,
Mm. Yeah.
and more just exploring, experimenting, inquiring.
Yeah.
I mean, a big part in my last few years is the journey of color.
Mm.
And that's sort of, I can weave that into my yoga journey with the chakras and the rainbow colors.
Yeah.
Then also the inquiry around my garden and the colors that they give to me when I'm dyeing something, a piece of material.
Yeah.
um and and how do they all hold together, and then how does that reflect with, you've got your dreamings, you've got rainbow serpent dreaming, you've got
Mm.
white
Yeah.
snake dream.
Yeah.
They're
It-
I don't know,
It's funny you mentioned, like, immediately I'm thinking of
they're part of the mystery to me.
so there's in some of the martial arts study, in terms of like the names of techniques, or as in like certain, you'd have in certain asana, the names of certain asana, the names of certain movements and motions. Um, the
Mhm.
colors are very vividly represented. Like they're very specifically. It's specifically, so
Yeah,
the white tiger against the red dragon. They're or the gold dragon. They're very specific colors. It's never,
they're
you
very
know,
symbolic.
never the kind of beige dragon. It's
The
never
gold, no, the grey serpent.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, the champagne colored. Like they're very specific, and they're very evocative, and they're very. It's like it all wraps together, and
I'll turn another light on.
yeah, yeah, slowly. I'm aware that we're at an hour 15, and I had said we'll give 1 hour, so I do this. I always go over time. How are you doing for time? Are you able to? We can talk another few minutes and then wrap
Okay,
it up.
yeah, I'm okay. I'll probably need to wrap up fairly soon because I've got
Yeah,
my daughter and my
yeah,
husband sort of
yeah.
floating around somewhere outside.
Giving you the space. Well, we can just take a few minutes to just kind of slowly wrap up the
Sure.
conversation there, rather than just about.
No,
So,
I don't need to do it.
um, I think it seems to me like with the discussion we've had, it's kind of obvious that for both of us, there's this highlight about the personal relationship, and the arts and the practices. They exist as um, they exist as the framework to hold you, but
Mm,
they're not that they're just the telephone. They're not the thing you're dialoguing with. It's
yeah.
it's something well beyond that. And yeah, and often my attempt to ever put into words what it is that I dialogue with always falls short, because it always ends up spewing out beyond the words that I could choose for it. And then I have to make exceptions. And including, and in the end, I just give up because it's fallen into so many, excuses and exceptions that it might as well not be called the thing that it was called anyway. And I like that. I like that. I know some people might want more definitive forms, but I usually say to, especially students who come with that, I usually say to them, look, give it 10 years, and then. I liked what you said, 1,000 days to master it. Just give it 1,000 days and then review your relationship with it.
If you still have a relationship with it in 1,000 days, you will have changed. You will have been changed.
Totally. Yeah. It would have molded you, forged you. Yeah. And then the questions that you ask now on day one, you've already answered them by day 1,000.
Sorry?
Like the questions that you came with on day one, seeking answers externally, you've answered them yourself by that time.
Yeah, and I also like what you've said of, I love Rumi as a poet. And I love that he was he was never ashamed at just this beautiful relationship with the beloved, that he used to refer to, his connection with the beloved. And I just think that's so, I don't know, it's sweet.
It is, isn't it? I don't know about how have you found it, but it really. So I first coined that from Hafiz, and Rumi's work as well.
Yeah.
And and of course he picked that perfectly. It really is the best way that I've found of relating to what it is that I'm having this relationship with, and all of the character traits, all the features, all the qualities, all of the cycles, because it is like a romantic relationship in this way. It's fun, it's childlike, it's endearing. Sometimes it's like, I'm having a tiff with infinite divine, and it's just it's ironic. Here I am, this human, having this tiff with the eternal, and I'm like, well, fine, I'm not speaking to you then. I'll talk to you in a week, And it's funny, but I found that it's been heartening. The beloved as a phrase, it kind of, I don't know, it wraps it up for me in a sentence in English.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, we're an hour and 20 minutes in. Thanks so much for your time. I'm aware that it's getting dark in the evening for us. We should wrap up the chat. But thanks so much for joining me in the discussion, and thanks for contributing your perspectives and dialoguing. I'm sure that everyone on the page will, and people listening back to the video, because obviously, like I said, if we're all just presenting our own perspectives of the work, there's certain people that's going to resonate with, and then there's certain people who that's not the language, that's not. And so I'm sure that people will find that through your specific expression and the way that you, your language and your perspective might really resonate with them. So I hope that it's great benefit.
Thank you so much, Dom. It's been lovely, and I've just loved connecting with you, and can't wait to connect with you again, whenever that is.
Yeah, maybe we can do another one of these sessions, and then even just get together and have a good old laugh about it.
Yeah, I've missed seeing you. Yeah. Lots of love to you. Thanks, and journey well.
Thanks, we will. Love to you and your family.
Bye. Oh, and that's great. Gracie's just come in here.
Hi,
Okay.
Have a wonderful night.
Thanks, Tom.
Bye.
Bye.